Hello everybody, Film Fan 108 here with another Netflix Nights number 9 for XX. And this is a movie that I saw through Netflix streaming. And before we get into talking about it, let's see what the good folks over at Netflix have for a synopsis for us today. This 4-part anthology of short horror films features stories that include some traditional themes, but all are shown from a female point of view. From 2017, rated R. And, number one, horror anthology movies are very interesting to make. Some of them are really good, some of them are not very good. The thing about it is, not all of them really hit. I mean, the gold standard, I think most people understand, is Creepshow. Creepshow is definitely the one that I think is the gold standard, and you take that and say, okay, this is the best one. I think Creepshow 2 is pretty good as well. And there's a lot of other ones that I think are pretty decent as well. You have, Body Bags, directed mostly by John Carpenter. You have, From a Whisper to a Scream. You have Tales from the Hood. I think that some of the ones as of recent are not terrible either. I think Tales of Halloween is okay. I think the first VHS is not bad. I think 2 and 3 I don't think are as successful, but I do like parts of VHS. I think the ABCs of Death, I think, is pretty unique. I like the first one much better than the second one, but I think they're all not bad. As I said, there's a lot of ones that are out there. Thinking also Southbound, but I think as a little mini genre in itself of these anthology movies, I think that the older ones, I think, work far better than nowadays. I think they do. I think that just the lack of resources that you had, and you had to make stuff a little bit more creative than you did now, I think it lends to a little bit more creativity. I think it lends to actually being more inventive. I think nowadays not so much. But the one reason why I was particularly interested in this one was because it had 4 female directors. All of the directors are female, and I thought that's a really cool thing. I like having more women in horror. I like having more female voices in the horror genre, director-wise. So I think in a lot of ways, this to me was something that I was incredibly looking forward to. And, it's just okay. It's not the greatest. And the 4 segments here is, one is The Box, The Birthday Party, Don't Fall, and Her Only Living Son. And the 4 female directors are basically, hope I don't, rip apart this name because it's Jovanka Volkovic, who did The Box, St. Vincent, who did The Birthday Party, Roxanne Benjamin, who did Don't Fall, and Karen Kusama, who did Her Only Living Son. Now, out of all of those 4 directors, the only one that's actually well known and the only one who has actually done actual feature-length movie work is actually Karen Kusama, who did Girl Fight back in 2000, Jennifer's Body back in 2009, who did The Invitation from 2015, which, by the way, The Invitation is also on Netflix streaming. If you guys haven't checked that out, please do, because it's actually a really solid movie. But the other three are not that well known of directors. They haven't really directed much. A couple of these people, it's their really first job filming anything, as far as a director is concerned. So that says either one of two things. That either says, okay, there's not enough female directors in horror movies, that they couldn't even find people that really had the experience, or that honestly, that's just not a genre that a lot of female want to get into as far as directing wise. I mean, but I give these women a lot of credit for trying. I absolutely 100% do. And honestly, something like the first story, The Box, or all of these stories, for instance, they're interesting ideas, but I don't think they're taken as far as they really need to be. For instance, with something like The Box, where basically this kid sees inside a box that this man is carrying, and it changes him in a way where he doesn't want to eat. Because I won't spoil this for you guys. I don't want to spoil it for you. You guys are going to have to watch it for yourselves, but it's not terrible, but again, the acting is okay. So I want to say in all these short stories, the acting is pretty good. So it's not the acting that falters these stories. It's not that way at all. What affects the movie is the fact that the premise isn't really explored to its fullest potential. The Box, again, is an interesting idea. It isn't taken as far as I would have wanted it to be taken. I think also the second story, which is The Birthday Party. And The Birthday Party is an interesting idea of a woman whose little daughter is having her birthday party, and the woman's husband has died, and she has to try to hide the body. Interesting idea. It's not taken far enough. It's not taken to the point where there's consequences. Like, you want to see the struggles that go on and the fact that she has to make really hard choices. I don't think you get that. I don't think you really, unfortunately, get that point of she's struggling. I mean, a little bit, but not a lot. And that's a problem. That's a real big problem for me. Also, in the third story, something like Don't Fall, the idea of a group of 4 people go out camping in this remote area where they're not supposed to be, and they end up messing with some sort of ancient tribal area, and something bad happens. Again, interesting idea, but again, it's not taken to its fullest potential, and you don't really, in my mind, get the impact of the story. Now, with a lot of these short stories, whether it's in this movie or whether it's in any horror anthology movie, the problem with doing short mini movies is that there's a potential to not get invested in the characters and not get invested in the story. Some are great at it. Look, Creepshow, great. I really love Tales from the Hood. Tales from the Hood is awesome. You can get invested in these characters and in these short stories, but it's gotta take a good script. It's gotta take directing that really involves you in these characters' journeys. And in this movie, unfortunately, I'm just not invested. I can't get invested in these characters. A lot of these characters, again, not that the acting's bad. I've said the acting's good, but you don't ever really get a chance to understand them in any way. You get the basic stuff, and that's it. And I wish we would have gotten a little bit more. I wish we would have gotten a tiny bit more where you actually feel somewhat invested. The closest one that gets you invested, I think, is actually the final story, which is Her Only Living Son, which again is directed by Karen Kusama, who is the more experienced of all of the female directors here. So that does tell you that she understands character, she understands pacing the story in a way that's going to be effective. You get it. So she does the best job, but again, she's the most experienced out of all four of them, so you kind of expect that it's going to be that way. And Her Only Living Son is based on the idea of this woman who is running from her past with her son, and her past catches up with her. Again, don't want to say anything more than that. There's a lot in there, but you do kind of get invested in the story. You do get invested in the characters. But again, it doesn't fully get there. And I think, again, maybe that story needed a little bit more time. Maybe that story needed a little bit more... Maybe needed a little bit more sort of gimme to kind of get you invested just a little bit more than it did. But it didn't really get there, I thought, the way that it should have. Now, again, it's an interesting idea, and I don't want to fault the movie for trying, because I'm glad it tried. I'm glad that these four female directors really tried, and I'm really glad that the movie is out there for people to enjoy. I didn't care for it. This is another horror anthology that there's been a ton of them so far within the last, dare I say, 10 years that have just kind of been okay. They haven't been great. They haven't been awesome. They've just been okay. And I don't know, like, how to really have people really invested in these. Do you maybe give these stories a little bit more longer time? Do you end up maybe not doing as many stories? Maybe do 3 instead of 4? I mean, how do you go about making a horror anthology that's really going to hit amazingly? It's not easy to do anymore. I don't think it is, especially with how many horror movies come out every single year. You really have to stand out. And I just don't see how these movies nowadays stand out, guys, especially horror anthologies that really want to make you invested. They got to go for it, guys. They really honestly do. Now, again, like I say, it's not terrible. I do have to say there is no... Usually between the stories, there's another story going on, usually. And there's no story here. Basically, it's sort of a dollhouse that is very creepy. And inside of it is sort of weird horror stuff that kind of pertains to the story, but not really. It's just... It wasn't effective to me. It wasn't effective as what I wanted it to be. And honestly, guys, it was kind of a letdown. If I'm going to give it anything, it's going to be the really lowest of recommendations. It's one that if you really like horror anthologies, if you really are interested in how I was with an all-female director list going forward and doing this, then give it a watch. I mean, it's on streaming right now. Easily go ahead and stream it. But again, understand that it really isn't as good as I think it could have been. I think the potential was there to really make something that was really amazing, something that was really powerful, and really something that actually would have really given, I think, females who are trying to enter into the horror genre something really solid to stand on and say, these females did it, it was incredibly successful, now we're gonna do it. It didn't fit, it didn't help. And so, as I said, I'm interested to see what these female directors do outside of these short stories. I think Karen Kusama is already a great, great director, and I think she can do some really solid work still going forward. I think the other directors need a little bit more time, a little bit more patience, but I think with the right script they could do an effective, wonderful job. So just know going in that it's not the best of what these horror anthologies can be. Certainly there's a ton more out there that is far more effective, but you know, I would say give it at least a mild watch. Try to do that. Alright guys, that is my thoughts on XX. I hope you guys liked it, and we'll be back next time for another Netflix Nights. See you later guys. Bye.